Okay, so obviously I'm not here today, but I didn't want to leave y'all out by yourselves to figure this out. I wanted to go back over what some of these words meant that you're going to see on the worksheet that you're doing today. So you've got two sides to your worksheet. I'm looking at the one right now that says special pairs of angles at the top. And there's a lot of vocabulary on here that we learned and we used in this section. We're looking at a test Thursday or Friday, and I want to make sure that you have these words back in your vocabulary and you know what you're looking for before we do the review and then do the test for this chapter. So special pairs of angles, the very first section says to find the measures of a complement and a supplement. So we talked about those two words. We said that if you have the complement or any derivative of that word complement, like complementary, that means that the two angles that you're talking about are going to add up to be 90 degrees. The supplement, or two supplementary angles, means that those two angles are going to add up to 180 degrees. And then later on down the page, you work with vertical angles. Vertical angles, you looked for the crisscross, like those two angles right there. And these were always congruent. They don't have to add up to anything in particular. They're just always going to be congruent to each other. So we can mark them on our picture with those little arcs down close to the vertex. And that's a trigger for our brain to know that those are supposed to be congruent to each other. So the very first part says find the measures of a complement and a supplement of angle C. So let's say they tell us the measure of angle C is, let me get a number that's not on here, 40 degrees. So you have a blank after that for your problems. All it says is angle C equals something, and then you have this blank there. What they want you to do is find the measure of that other angle. So if it's the complement, those two angles have to add up to 90 degrees. So something plus 40 has to be 90 degrees. Subtract from both sides, either in your head or with your calculator. And the complement is 50 degrees. So that's all you have to put right there. But then they ask you to also give the supplement. So that means that you need to take something plus 40 equals 180. Subtract 40 from both sides. And so you know that your supplement has to be 140 degrees. So those are the two answers that you have in that order. And then that's all you can do. I think there's one. Yep, there's one that looks a little crazy. So, for example, let's say the measure of angle C equals 110. Same question, what's the measure of a supplement? What's the measure of the complement? The thing is, if we were going to add something to 110 to be 90 degrees, it's going to have to be a negative number. And we can't have a negative angle. So in this case, since this angle is already over 90 degrees, there is no complement. So we would put none for that part. And then for the supplement, it's something plus 110 equals 180. So subtract, and you get 70 for your supplement. So that's what you're doing on that first part. They try to trip you up a couple times with some crazy numbers, but for the most part, they're pretty easy to do. So remember what those words mean, complement and supplement, and go with that. You're using that same vocabulary for the diagram on 9 through 12, 13 through 20. Label the stuff that you know. Those two pictures are kind of messy, so it might help to redraw them on your paper and label the stuff up on there. I think I mentioned one time that if you have trouble seeing what you're supposed to be doing in the picture, then draw the picture really big on a piece of paper and go from there. And label all of your angles, all the stuff that they tell you about it, and you're finding a measure on 13 through 20 based on what you know there. On 21 and 22, that's where you're using those vertical angles. So what we're doing there, they want you to recognize that you have the two vertical angles there directly across from each other, and it says to find x, find the value of x. Well, if these are vertical, we know that they're congruent to each other. So all we really have to do is set those two angles equal to each other, and then you can solve from there to get x. So subtract 5, divide, and you get that x equals 20. So that shouldn't be too bad. 23, 24 say C and D are complementary. So remember what that word means and complete the following. So figure out what x is and then plug it in to get the other two angles. Same thing for 25 and 26. It says supplementary though. So remember what that word means. Solve for x, plug it in to get the two angles, and you're good to go there. On the back side, the writing is smaller. Looks like that. It says, so for the first one, write 4 different names for the angle below. So go back and look in your notes where we talked about how to name an angle. You should be able to get 4 names from the stuff you have in that picture on number 1. And then for number 2 through 6, you have this picture. And you're going to use that picture for all of those problems, but the information is going to change. So you draw it for number 2 and label it and solve everything out. And then for number 3, you need to redraw the picture, label it, and go from there. So let's just look at number 2. Number 2 says angle PQS. So that's the whole thing is 45. And SQR, this bottom part, is 26. And they want us to find the measure of angle PQR. Well, I don't know what PQR is, and they didn't give me anything for that, so I'm just going to put an X right there. And then I'm going to set up what's called the angle addition postulate. I don't think they actually called it that in this section, but that's what it is, where it says this part plus this part equals the whole thing. Kind of like that segment addition postulate did. And then you can subtract 26 from both sides to solve it out. And what is that, 19? I hope. So, whoops, that's not my answer though, because that's x. So then we would have to go back and plug that in, and up here is where we would put that it's 19 degrees. So that's how you're going about that. On 7 through 12, those are true or false questions, and you have to think about the wording there. It's kind of tricky a little bit. Number 7 says ray AB is the same ray as ray BA. The little ray thing has gotten wiped off over the years because this is an old worksheet that I made up a long time ago. But think about that, how we learn to name a ray, and if that's true or not. 13 through 18, you should be able to draw that picture one time and label it with all the stuff, and then be able to answer all of those questions. And 19 through 23 is more like 2 through 6. So you need to draw that picture for each question, but there is a little bit of information between number 14 and 19 that is relevant to that picture for every situation that they give you. So I'm going to leave the original copy with Miss Sims, and that way if you can't read something, then she has that, so you can just ask. Most of it should be pretty okay. I'll put some information on the board over here. I'll move my my grid, or my coordinate plane, and I'll redraw some of the pictures so you can see them nice and neat and know what some of the things that I know you can't really read very well say. But anyway, this is getting those angle things back into your brain. We'll finish up the chapter probably Wednesday, if not before. And then Thursday is when I'm thinking we'll have a review and Friday test. So I would like to do the test on Thursday, but I don't think we'll get it. But Thursday or Friday, we'll have a test over this stuff. Make sure you know your vocabulary and use these problems to practice and get that part back in your head. So I'll see y'all on Wednesday. Bye.